What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Reclamation. My name is Malia, and I am once again grateful and excited to bring you yet another episode filled with such deep wisdom. It was really fun to dive into themes of the hero's journey with my guest, Kimber. Kimber takes a really compassionate, wonder-filled approach to her life experiences. And I met her at a time where she was in real deep darkness. Some of the darkest parts of ourselves that one can traverse, Kimber has sat with. And I've always appreciated the way that she has navigated her life experiences. I love conversations with her. She was actually our first guest of the podcast, but we had these technical issues and her episode didn't air, which was such a bummer. As you will hear, we chat about it a bit in this episode. It's a really cool full circle moment for me to have Kimber back. She is a friend, and so this episode really is just a glimpse into what some of my friendships and relationships get to be like, where we talk about some of the hard things that we go through. And I really wanted to also bring y'all into what can be experienced on the other side of those hard things. Kimber is a Reiki practitioner and a coach, and she likes to help others to connect to their authentic selves. And she's really great at helping them uncover the wisdom that they inherently hold within. She's also the president of Her Heart, which is a nonprofit focused on empowering women through the arts. Kimber fosters spaces for self-expression and community connection, and she's dedicated to guiding others on their journeys of self-discovery and transformation, which you will hear in the way that she talks about her own journey. So this episode really is a live glimpse into somebody's life, their ongoing journey of reclamation. We predominantly talk about the hero's journey, which is a topic that I love to get into. And it's actually where this idea of the reclamation came from. Having the opportunity of experiencing a hero's journey myself and understanding that on the other side of the dip down into darkness, there's such this beautiful rebirth. And it's in that space that we gain this reclamation after all that we've learned and the medicine that we gained in the darkness that we felt. And so that's where the reclamation, the idea of it came from. And I wanted people to come and share their stories and to just inspire all of us who are on our own journey and to offer this sense of like encouragement that being in the darkness, being in that pit, it means something for your life, and to make it matter and to take the opportunity so that it can change you, so that it can serve you in your, my belief, ultimate purpose, which is growth and expansion. We talk also about letting go and allowing. I know that you have heard this topic so much, but I think it's because it's just almost like that ticket. It's like the universe is speaking to us. It's, y'all, if you want to just be able to have a lot more space and freedom and just like the big sigh in your life, let go of control, be in allowance, be in surrender. We talk about how it is so hard to be in surrender. Okay. Well, I mean, it's hard and it's also really scary, and learning to be in the present moment. It's just a challenge. But I hope you take away from this episode some inspiration of what life can be like once you begin to experience those moments of allowing, and also some tips on how to do that in your own life. Okay, I super hope you enjoy this episode. We are on YouTube now, if that's where you like to get your episodes. I say we, but it's like I'm a one-man team. Maybe I'm just projecting into the future. We are now on YouTube. And one more thing I wanted to give you guys a heads up on. I want you to watch out for this series they have coming out with one of my previous guests, Hillary Stark. We are collaborating on a series that focuses on the sexual reclamation and how that reclamation really brings massive aliveness into your life. I have some passion in this area, and I'm really excited to bring that series to you. It will come out in February, Valentine's month. So be looking for that. Okay, thank you very much and enjoy the episode. Have a great week. I do want to welcome you back. You were our first guest on this podcast when Kelsey and I hosted it together, but there were just so many technical errors and issues because we were beginners. We didn't know so many things, and it was a shame because the message that you had to share, the things that you wonder about, and the way that you wonder is so cool. I think what it does is it really invites everyone else to also wonder and to ask the questions. And the way that you talk about, what's going on in your own mind, your own heart, your own energy field is inspiring and enlightening. So I was so excited when you said you would come back. Let's have a redo in a sort of way. But of course, you are contemplating, learning about, and experiencing different things than you did last time we had you on, which was over a year ago. And somebody like yourself who is, there's a wonderful word. What is it? Attracted, allured by the unknown, the questions of how can this be different, and just exploring life through your own lens. That's something I think you do, is you explore life and really ask a lot of questions. Someone like yourself that does that, a year and a half changes you a lot.
Yeah, it does. So, I can attest it does.
I, for myself, am very much looking forward to all the things you have to share with me. So just take me into your life, into your story, and what you've been experiencing lately.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for seeing me. That was such a beautiful introduction. I feel so seen in my wondering and my exploring and my I love that. And also I want to congratulate you on a year and a half of podcasting. As a podcaster who has been rather inconsistent myself, like that's super impressive and a big deal. So way to go.
Oh, thank you. Really cool. Thank you. I think that I wouldn't be here if I didn't really find a lot of satisfaction in it. And it's very fulfilling. So it's my pleasure.
Oh, I love it. So I guess on my end, since we're talking about podcasting right now and change and how far I've come in the last year and a half, I've actually, a lot of my journey started out with a podcast. I think we probably talked about it on the last episode. It was called Just Be Your Bad Self. And it was very much about letting go of perfectionism and self-acceptance and kind of accepting the shadows. And a lot of it was about my journey with like my spiritual journey. And at the time, I would say I was very much, if you're familiar with the hero's journey, everyone kind of starts in this happy Garden of Eden type state. In Lord of the Rings, it's the Shire, right? And then you get this call to go into some kind of underworld. And a lot of times we resist the call because who wants to leave the Garden of Eden and go into the underworld? And then sometimes something happens that just kind of pushes you out of the nest and off into the woods you go. I would say when I was doing that podcast, I was very much in this underworld darkness. I think you mentioned the unknown, right? This very void like part of my journey. And it was very dark. And my podcast kind of gave me a little torch to help me find
Mm-hmm.
my way through that darkness. And now I am starting to feel called back to this podcasting world, but with a slight shift. And instead of this, just be your bad self, like rebel against the system and be who you are.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, how did that title help with the torch, being the torch?
It was a permission slip for me. It was a permission slip for me to be in the underworld, I think.
Yeah, just be who you are right now.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah. And to feel my
And because
anger and to feel these darker, shadowy aspects to kind of bring this shadow stuff out and say, this is okay, that this is part of who I am. And I kind of had to slap that label bad on it because that's the judgment that part of me has, right? This is bad parts of Kimber.
oh, that's so interesting to me, because when I hear that title, just be your bad self, I think of the word bad as in like um Michael Jackson's phrasing of being bad, or like the 90s, you're so bad, like you're rad or
Yeah.
cool. So interesting that you thought of that word as also those parts of us that we are ashamed of, that we want to hide, that we have been told it's not ladylike in that sense. This is not what we are or what we do.
Yes. And it was a very intentional play on words, right? I
Okay,
wanted that,
okay,
like, yeah, you're a badass, right? Be your bad
okay.
self, like rad, you're cool. Um, that's in there, but also very much
Hmm.
like part of who you are, part of the authentic being that
Hmm.
makes us up is also some shadow, and we have some judgments on parts of ourselves. And I wanted to talk about those
Yes.
things on that podcast. For the last year and a half, I think I maybe went all the way down into the darkness. It feels like to the deep, deep part of the woods, to the point that I couldn't even sustain. I had to let go of podcasting.
I love the hero's journey. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. And I feel that those who say yes to that opportunity, if you say yes, you're conscious about what's going on. And so then you can move through that journey in a way that is more accepting. And I think it makes that easier. Doesn't mean no hero's journey is easy. It wouldn't be a hero's journey if it was easy. And second, by accepting that call, because I think all of us get pushed out of the nest,
Yeah.
but not many of us see what's going on and accept the challenge, the call, the opportunity to go through that journey, that deep, dark, under the earth, in the deep woods, like you said, journey. I would love if you could share briefly, just highlight while you were in that darkness. And this is when I met you. I met you when you were
Mm-hmm.
going through
Yeah, you
that.
did.
And the thing that you did have that was on your side was your wonder, was your curiosity about what you were experiencing, what's going on here for me. Some highlights of your takeaways of A, biggest thing I learned, and B, and maybe they're the same, what really brought you through that so that you can enter into a rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Well, what's coming to mind is talking to a friend the other day. She's a friend I had from high school. So she knew me before the deep journey into
Mm,
the woods. And we were just kind of catching up on our lives from the last decade. And there were tears shed, and we're just talking about how hard adulthood is, how it's not what we really expected it to be. And I said something like, I really thought I was such a smart, good, well-intentioned girl, obedient, and I really thought that I just listened to the people that were older than me, followed all the rules, did everything right, that I could
mhm,
avoid the hard.
stuff and that I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have to fall apart in my life. And that's not at all what happened to me. And she said something like, don't you wish we could go back and warn ourselves of what was to come so that we could avoid it?
Mm-hmm.
And I sat with that for a second because we've been through some hard stuff, really painful, hard stuff that I have wished away many, many times. But when she said that, I knew somewhere deep in my bones that that's not the way. And I said, no, because we wouldn't be who we are. We wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
know the things we know. We wouldn't have transformed the ways that we've transformed. And there's a story from Women Who Run with the Wolves. And this story is called The Wolf's Eyelash. And I will give it to you briefly, which is there's this girl, and all her life, the adults around her are saying, don't go into the woods. There are wolves there. Don't go into the woods. Don't go into the woods. And she says, I have to go into the woods. My life won't start until I go into the woods. And one day she goes into the woods, and sure enough, she meets a wolf. But the wolf doesn't attack her because it's trapped. And she lets it out of this trap, but then she still expects that it's going to eat her. And she says, just eat me, let's get this over with. And the wolf says, this isn't that kind of story. You've read all these fairy tales that the wolf eats you. I'm not going to eat you, but I'm going to give you something for getting me out of this trap. And the wolf takes an eyelash from its eye and hands it to the girl. And the girl finds that she can look through this eyelash and see things for what they are. And she can see who has ill intentions, and she can see what people need, and she can see who needs kindness, and she can see who needs laughter. And she now has this medicine inside her that she can give to people, and this tool of the wolf's eyelash to see what people need. That's why we have to go into the woods.
Yeah. The medicine inside her that she can now give to others. In your own experience in the woods, did you find your medicine? And did you find that that medicine perhaps was the medicine you needed to get out of the woods? And then you can give that to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times our medicine doesn't quite have a name. I would love to box it up
Yeah.
nicely and say, yeah, this is the medicine I found.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know aspects of the medicine. I know it has to do with my wonder and curiosity. I know it has to do with being present. I know it has to do with being accepting of light and shadow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of medicine that I came away with that I'm still learning how to connect with after my sojourn into the deep woods.
Yes, yes. And I actually had this cool metaphor come to my mind. I love metaphors. You spoke to something that is so true and that's becomes a cliche saying. We've heard it from our parents, we've heard it from our leaders and our elders, and that's the what you told your friend, which was without these hardships, we wouldn't be who we are. You know, we hear that a lot. And when you're going through the deep dark in your own self, you don't really want to hear that. Like you've talked with your friend, you just would rather wish it away. Actually, never mind. I don't want this. Maybe I signed up for it, but I unsign up for this. But the metaphor, since we're in the woods today, um, you were able to see, at least in hindsight, but maybe throughout your journey through the woods, you know how the light can come through and hit the forest floor every now and then, and how that helps us to see, to light our way, to feel warmth on our skin again, but yet we're still in the woods. Did you have that buoying you up throughout your process? Maybe what were some of the things that did do that, or knowing while you were in the woods that this was for your benefit? Eventually you would see the clearing, the meadow, the rainbow.
There were moments where there really was no light. I got pretty dark in there. I struggled with depression, some suicidality. That was kind of the breaking point, which I think a lot of us have to come to a breaking point, because it's the brokenness, I think, maybe, that lets the light in.
Yeah, well, if the metaphor is the canopy above that blocks out the light tends to open up and break apart.
Mm-hmm.
The brokenness there, the cracks, all of those
Mm-hmm.
metaphors.
Mm-hmm. And there came a point where it didn't matter that I was trying so hard to get out of the woods. I was trying so hard to function and to do well. And there came a point where it was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. I can't. I'm tired. I give up. There came a giving up.
Yeah.
A surrender. An accepting of what was, which was a lot of darkness. And with that breaking point and surrender came just this awareness that something had to change. And what ended up happening is I was in this super dark space and I was desperate, honestly. And so I turned to plant medicine, which terrified me. It terrified me. But it was that or death, honestly. It got that low. And I just ended up having this mystical experience with plant medicine that gave me some hope and gave me a sense of, oh, there's something bigger out there than me. Maybe there is some kind of meaning here, or I don't know. It was some kind of light that came in. And it wasn't like, if everything's light, everything's good. But it was that glimmer, right? That breakthrough of a little bit of light on the forest floor. And it gave me an opportunity to seek out more of that. And so I have, and I've reconnected with my spirituality. In fact, when I talked to you last on the podcast, I was probably right in the middle of this part.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, everybody. We are going to take a quick time out so I can tell y'all about TBM, which stands for To Be Magnetic. TBM is a neural manifestation program that I have been doing now for over a year. I know. Manifestation is a hot buzzword right now, and there's a lot out there about the how, the what, the when, the where, and the why of manifesting. I actually love that. We are all different. I think it makes sense. There are a lot of different ways to go about anything, really. That being said, I am choosing to promote TBM. Not only is it science backed using neuroplasticity, EMDR, hypnosis, etc., to get you into alignment with your authentic desires, which means manifesting from the heart and the soul rather than the ego. But the program also supports my favorite theme, coming back home to ourselves. Outside of manifesting into my life the vibes that fit my authenticity, I've been able to uncover and heal so many layers of pain, shame, and conditioning that stood in the way of living a life where I feel whole and worthy inherently. Outside of any label, title, accolades, I'm worthy and whole because I just am. I'm sharing TBM with you for that reason primarily. Coming back to ourselves, discovering our inherent worth, well, that is a reclamation worth living for. To learn more about TBM, check the show notes. I'll direct you to their podcast, a specific episode where you can hear all about the manifestation process. When you're ready to join the program with me, you can get 15% off the membership using my code MALIA, all caps MALIA, for 15% off. The link to the membership will also be in my show notes. Okay, love you all very much. Let's get back to the episode. I think a theme, if I were to put a theme on your lessons in all the ways you were taught, based off what I know, it would be letting go of one right way and truly just the acknowledgement and the knowing within yourself that there is not one right way and that the way that you are doing it is the right way.
Yeah.
Where you're at right now in this moment is right. It's the right way. It's the right thing. It's
Yeah.
the right.
And even more than the word right, it is what is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And deconstructing even the word right, letting go of rightness.
Yeah. I like to choose a word. I know some other people do this too. I like to choose a word for the year instead of setting resolutions. Last year, my word was embody. So I really cared about embodying all these things I've been learning. This year, my word is allow. I'm a little scared of this word, but this is the lesson I think that I took away from the woods and that helped me get out of it, was instead of trying to force anything or think this is how this should be, this is what my life should look like, I finally am starting to learn to allow it to be what it is. And there's so much power in that. So much. I've been thinking a lot lately about God and how I think when we think about divinity and power and godlike power, we think we can control things and make our world whatever way we want. But that is not what God does. God is the great allower. God is so big that God allows things to be the way they are and allows us to be the way they are. And he is big, or she, or, whatever your definition of God is, they can hold it. God can hold all of it. And I've found the power and the transcendence that comes. It's not consistent. This is why it's my word this year. I really want to learn this. But when we can allow our problems to be there, we become bigger than our problems. When we can't accept our problems, we're making ourselves small and they are taking us over. But when we can allow them, now we've created some space and we're bigger, and there's power in that.
Yes. It's a very different message than existed when we were growing up. So about, 20, 30 years ago, the message was to, in a way, erase those weaknesses and the things that are our shadow. So this message is very different. I think that many people enter into that midlife crisis point because there was so much covering up of who they are. There was no allowances, right? I love the way you express God being the great allower and allowing what is. Take me into now some of those things that you've been learning. What's helping you to be in that space, in that surrender? Here's another metaphor too. It's like when you are out in the ocean and there is an undertow. If you fight against the undertow, you're just going to get exhausted and possibly drown and be carried away. It's not until you surrender and let that undertow just take you and spit you out the other side that you escape the undertow. That in that way nature teaches us about surrendering. It's so hard, so scary to do that. So yeah, those were some things you were bringing in, and the theme to light up 2025 as allow. And how do you stay there? What's scary to you? Why is that word scary to you? Just all the things, Kimber.
Okay, all the things. So when you were talking about that undercurrent, I watched Moana 2 last month with my family, and that song in there, I think it's like Sometimes You Have to Get Lost.
Yeah.
I freaking loved that song. I was like, yes, that is exactly what you have to do. And she jumps into this dark abyss, and that's the only way out. And it is terrifying. There's this return to faith, which is such a weird thing for me because I had such a departure from that word. And it was such a triggering, like, oh, faith. Well, I'm not a sheep. I don't just blindly believe in things. And now I'm returning and I'm listening a lot to Eckhart Tolle, a lot. Every morning this year I've been going on a walk and I am listening to his audio books and his talks, and just to remind me, like, there is safety in the present moment, because there's a part of us that it's our ego, right? Our ego likes control. We like to know the future. We do not like the unknown. And to surrender to what's happening in the now feels terrifying. I've been practicing on my walks, the kind of walking meditations, and I'll listen to these books, and then I will often turn off the book for about 15 to 20 minutes just to practice what I'm trying to learn here, which is this art of allowing. And it takes a minute. Sometimes I can't even do it, but it takes some time it feels like stepping into an icy river, to allow yourself sink into the present moment, because we have these anxieties and these protectors that live in us that are like, no, we got to think about the future. We got to remember what happened to us in the past because we're not safe. We're not safe. We're not safe. Don't stop thinking. Don't sink into this moment. You're going to lose control and you're going to die. Like it feels like a life or death thing.
Well, you're stepping into the icy river. I love that so much, because I've been in my own experiencing, suddenly becoming aware of some tension that I've been holding in my body that I never knew I had there. It's so subtle, but yet all parts of me have this tension that's there. And you step into this icy river and your body tenses up, right? But the thing that's been interesting for me with that tensing is that, I know the reason why I'm tense now, but my body's so used to being that way, that being different, untensing, which is like, it's different than the icy river, but what you're doing is your body's experiencing a different way. And it's just like, I don't know how to be here. And this isn't comfortable. This isn't right. And so it's such a challenge to say to yourself, to your body, to your mind, all of it is like, no, we're going to be in this space. And you'd think that just allowing yourself to be in the present moment would be so easy. But your body's not used to that. Your energy is not used to that. So it is like, what's happening? I'm stepping into an icy river. So I love that.
Yeah. And it's this acknowledgement, like, our ego thinks we have way more control over our lives than we actually do, because we really don't have control. We're always a little bit lost. We're always walking through the unknown, but we like to pretend like we're not. We like to pretend like we know what's happening. And that's where that tension comes from. It's this protective, like, okay, I'm in control. And this kind of shield we walk around with. And it's this idea and this illusion that we can control our environment if we resist the right things. But stepping into this icy river is this, like, okay, it's this acknowledgement that we are not in control, nor were we ever, but it's facing it. It's facing the knowledge that we're not in control. And it's this faith. Every time I do this, the word that comes to my mind is, oh my gosh, this is what practicing faith feels like, which is, I'm going to trust that I'm safe in this present moment, and that whatever happens is going to happen, and it's not in my control, and I can surrender to what is. And it is terrifying. It is a really scary practice, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And once you're in the icy river, there comes this release. I've only experienced this a few times, but I experienced it, so I know it's there.
Yes.
There's this release in the surrender of it. And there's this peace. It's like this, it's not happiness. It's not this excited feeling. It's just like, it's a feeling of surrender. And it's beautiful once you sink into it.
I like the word that you use, peace, and your expression of experiencing faith in that way is really cool as well. And anybody who's done cold plunges knows that that also happens while you're in the cold. If you can allow it, allowing it, there will come a release where your body's like, okay, I got this. I got past that first scary few seconds, but now I got this, and then you can withstand it, or be in it. I like that better. Be in it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in the deep, dark woods, and this is where you first learn to allow. And you're experiencing a lot more light again, coming into your rebirth. And how is this allowing what is the teachings of Eckhart Tolle now being the torch for you?
I think now it's being the torch because I've experienced what it feels like to surrender. I had this moment. I had been practicing. I'd been listening to Eckhart Tolle in the morning. I had been practicing allowing all day long, and it is. I'm starting to understand why people practice meditation, and I have incorporated that into my life because it is a practice. It's not something. Enlightenment or the state of being isn't, at least in my experience, something you just fall into. You have to practice it. And I had been practicing this all day, and it was like a return to the breath, right? I would notice when my thoughts were attaching to things and I was getting stressed, and I would slow down and try and sink back into that icy river. And I'd been practicing. And that evening, my husband invited me. He had to go drop something off at his mom's house. And my mother-in-law is a very intense, anxious person. And it can trigger a lot of those same things in me to be around her. But I went with my husband, and I went and sat in his mom's kitchen. And she was her normal, like, super anxious, couldn't sit still. Even talking about it, I can feel my whole body tense up, like. And usually I have a really hard time going to her house, and I'm like, come on, Elliot, let's go home. We have to get back to the kids. We have to, whatever. And I think because I had been practicing this state all day, I don't know what it was about being in that space, but it was like I think it was a moment of enlightenment, honestly.
Oh, very cool.
And in the weirdest place, right? At my mother-in-law's house in her kitchen while she was being very anxious and talking about all these things that she was stressed about. Meanwhile, I kind of weirdly went into this transcendent, like, I really do. I think it was a state of enlightenment where I could allow things to be where they were. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of love and peace and calm and presence. And it wasn't that I was dissociating from it. Like, I normally think I would escape that in my head by dissociating from the whole experience.
Yeah, right.
But I leaned into it. I got super present. I was super in my body. I was intently listening to what my mother-in-law was saying. And I don't think I've ever felt better in my life. And it was the weirdest moment to feel that. And that happened, I think, a week ago. This is very recent.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a very new practice for me. But that happened a week ago. And now I know, like, I can get there. Even in a really, something that would normally be a very stressful circumstance for me, I know I can experience it differently. And so now all of a sudden I'm really motivated to practice and to learn and to listen. And I'm not good at it yet. There's also this trick in now I've experienced that, and I want that feeling all the time. And it's hard to allow that I don't feel that way all the time, because I get frustrated, and then it adds like extra layers, it gets complicated.
You're like back at the whole lesson of allowing yourself to be where you are.
I'm like, oh, I want to just be enlightened, dang it. And I'm not. I have to allow myself to not be. And then maybe one day I'll land in that space again. But I've experienced it. And that experience feels like a light to me that I want to get back to. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It was really beautiful. And we're interesting as humans. This kind of goes into other belief systems, but for me, I do believe we are carrying with us a spark of God. So perhaps that spark of God, sometimes we know that we know it all. So we get frustrated. And in our schooling that we're experiencing, and how we grow and expand, and we also know that I know I can't grow and expand without challenge. It's just not possible. Physics shows us such. But I don't want to, and I just want to be my God self. Can I just be my God self? So I would love to know some of the things you're doing to practice allowing. What's that like for you? Practicing.
So the easy practice is when my kids are in school and I go on my walk, and I'm actually also doing Reiki now for people, just very present. I view Reiki as just getting really present with another person.
Yeah.
And I'm also teaching voice lessons, but in a more holistic way, which is when I get really present with someone else's voice.
Oh, wow.
And we hear what it's trying to speak to us and what's keeping their voice stuck, and kind of viewing it as this almost like the spark of God you're talking about, this self energy, this higher self. I view the voice that way, and that when it gets stuck and when things are happening, it's a reflection of what's going on. I've kind of built in these practices. I'm teaching voice lessons, I'm doing Reiki, I'm going on walks, I'm meditating. And these are the easy practices for me. And I can often get to this state of presence, not always, but often, because I've set these intentional times to do so. The hard practice is when my family is home and I have kids and my husband, and I have this inner part of me that wants to control them and is very attached to what they're doing and how I'm managing my home. And I will be honest, I have not yet figured out how to practice the allowing. I know I need to. I want to find this inner spaciousness around my family. I've not experienced that yet. And that, I think, is where I need to bring the practice.
This is definitely something that I am not professional at either, but definitely something that has been buoying me up over the last year, is being present and allowing, and the freedom. Oh my goodness, the freedom that comes when you allow. But the thing is, if we can look at it just like everything else, allow it to be like everything else that we want to pursue. So if I am deciding that I want to be an artist and I've never been an artist before, I'm going to naturally give myself time to get better, to get good at it, right? And so in the practicing of the allowing, I think that what the process that you're going through is very natural, and you start with yourself, and that began in your deep woods, and then you get good there, and all of a sudden it just starts to expand outside of you. And it's easy to give allowance to mother-in-law or to neighbor, and it is harder to give allowance to husband, spouse, partner, and children. So I don't know, Kimber, there are times when I'm thinking about being in my allowance and really just flowing with what is. And I think of war. Actually, that's what comes in my mind. And what would it be like to experience war, knowing that everything that's happening around me, outside of me, is what is, and it's not bad and wrong. It's going to be filled with all kinds of emotions, but what would it be like to see war and experience war, allowing it all? You know, I have no answer to that, but there's this sense of freedom that opposes fear inside myself. And I think for me, allowing erases fear. Okay, so why is it harder to not allow, to be an allowance around spouse, partner, and children? Is because your fear connected with them is higher. There's so much more at stake when it comes to them. And with yourself, there's not a lot at stake. It's just like, well, if I'm unhappy, I'm unhappy. But if my child is unhappy or my spouse is unhappy, that's a whole different thing. As women, too, we want to make sure everybody else around us is doing better. And in your control, most control comes from love, though beneath that is fear. It's that fear-based love.
Mm-hmm.
My love is fear-based for
Yeah.
you. So I don't know. I just wanted to pass that on to you, is that where you're at, you will begin to experience more and more allowance with the family. And it just makes sense that it's harder. It makes so much sense that it's harder. Eckhart Tolle says something that kind of goes along what we've been touching on lightly, which is that God spark within us, like God's presence within us, shrouded by overactive minds that prevent us from being present. And in your reclamation of faith in your own language of how you feel it and experience it, and your reclamation of God again, how has being present grown that?
Just thinking about my walk this morning, and my walks these weeks, and this practice, and like, kind of what's the point? I'm someone who my whole life has really, really cared about what is it I'm supposed to be doing? What is my life purpose? My mom could tell you how many nights in high school I went on walks with her saying, should I be a dolphin trainer, or should I be mom, or should I be a music teacher, or what should I be doing? What should I be doing? What's going to be this thing that fills me up, that I'm going to change the world? And I thought that after college, I would have that figured out. And that didn't happen. And even still, sometimes I have talks with my mom about, should I start this business? What do you think about this idea? What do you think about this idea? And in this point, I'm reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth right now. And in this second half of the book, he talks about our life's purpose, which was really exciting to me because this is a question I ask myself often.
Someone's going to give me the answer. Figure it out.
And what he says is your primary purpose, and every human's primary purpose on this earth, is to awaken. And that ties into this faith and this reclamation of God. And it's this reclamation of God in me and this reclamation of God in what is. And he says, once you can sink into your primary purpose, which is to be present and to awaken, your outside purpose, which is your secondary purpose, will just kind of line up for you. But right now in this moment, your purpose is the step you're taking. Your purpose is watching the bird that's flying by you. Your purpose is turning the page of the book. That's your purpose. And I've found so much joy and freedom in that idea that my purpose isn't this big thing that I have to go out and search for. Like right now, my purpose is talking to Malia. And I think just because we have to talk about Fred Rogers before we get off this interview, this is why I love Fred Rogers, because he discovered this. I look at Mr. Rogers as an enlightened person. He discovered this, and I've been going on this rabbit hole since watching the movie with Tom Hanks. It's A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is a beautiful movie, and I just had to research this person and see how much was made up and how much is this really who this man was. And let me tell you, the more I research about Fred Rogers, I just read his biographies and cry, and watch documentaries about him and cry, because he understood that what his purpose was whatever he was doing in that moment. And there's a part in the movie that I think is probably my favorite part, and it's a true story. Pieces of this movie they pulled from real events and real things that Mr. Rogers said. And he's talking to this reporter on the phone who doesn't know him for an interview. And the interviewer asks him, what's your secret? Like, why are you so beloved? Why do people love you? And why do you have this successful children's show? And Mr. Rogers says, because when we're shooting one of our shows, I always look into the camera at one child and love that person. And that's the most important thing I'm doing then. And he says, for example, he says to the reporter, do you know what the most important thing is to me right now? And the reporter says, what? And he says, talking to Lloyd Vogel on the phone. This is the most important thing to me right now. And he put all of himself into that. And then he lived this beautiful life because it was moment after moment of him living his purpose. Whether it was tying his shoes or putting on his cardigan or talking to some reporter that he's never met before on the phone, he made that his purpose. And I think that's enlightenment.
Yeah. In the sense too of, it's like he's if we're saying awakened is our purpose, right? He's awakened to each moment having meaning. Each moment matters. In somatic therapy, one of the steps to learning what your body feels, how it feels, not emotionally, but more like felt sense of like tightness again, or the warmth, the heat, the tingling. One of the steps is to do a task you've always done. Every single day you do this task, showering, right? And we shower slowly. We shower with an intention of noticing each movement that we're making and what it feels like on our scalp when we're scrubbing our hair. And for me, I was able to take that into everyday tasks that I'm doing and really being present. For you, is that how you're also practicing, you're allowing, as you're just slowly in presence of just each thing matters? And it's an interesting notion, isn't it? Quite opposite of all of the things that have been in circulation that tell us what happiness and success is. The go, 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 do, and picture like CrossFit exercising in every aspect of our lives, pushing and pulling the weight everywhere that we are. So opposite from slowing down and being in each moment. That's so cool about Fred Rogers. I didn't know that about him. You're speaking to our purpose is in awakening, and that it will just, that's our inner purpose, is awakening. And that can mean a lot of things. Awakening can mean a lot of things. Your awakening. Your awakening happened when you stepped into the woods, and then the awakening begins. Our own awakening always has all these different things that we've learned throughout it. And then the fact that the outward purpose will line up for you is also part of having faith.
That's that reclamation of the faith, right? Trusting that if I make this moment my purpose, my outer purpose will line up. It takes a lot of faith.
It's a lot of faith. It's not anything that's been taught, and people like Eckhart have definitely been changing the language towards that, but I don't know if we have very much evidence. There can be found success. I think all of us carry around that desire to know our purpose, and to just step into that saying of like, okay, if I slow down in my life and I just allow every moment to be what it is and find beauty in that, then my purpose, my outside purpose, will line up for me. It's a huge leap of faith. And you and I are kind of in the same space of having felt what it feels like when you're in allowance, that freedom, that light, that God spark that is unshrouded by our overactive minds. I can say for myself, it feels nice. And if my outside purpose lines up, great. But now I can enjoy feeling nice.
Yeah.
just in allowance.
And that piece of like, oh, it's not in my control, so I don't have to put in all the effort to control it. Because it was never in my control anyway. There's that moment of fear, that dipping your toe in the icy river of recognition that it's not in your control. But beyond that icy feeling is the peace of not having to stress, because it is all going to be the way it's going to be.
Yes. I think as a parent, that has been something that has really blessed my life, is to be able to say, each of my children have their own journey to go on. And if I can release them to their journey, I've done them actually a favor. I have been for them what they needed me to be, was to be, a guide, a helper, and provider of some of those basic human needs, and then to release them to their journey.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Malia. I need to remember that in my parenting. I release you to your journey. With my husband too, honestly, right? Because I think they all should be on my journey with me. But we really do have different journeys, even though we are in the same family.
Yes. And I think that the need or the idea of having them be on the same journey as you reflects with the control that we take, because we don't want them to feel sorrow. We don't want them to feel pain and anguish and darkness. But as you are one who's come out of that, and you would never trade it. As you expressed to your friend, you would never trade it. You offer that to your child, to your spouse, to everyone around you when you just release them to their journey. And it's like so freeing. And then you become what they need you to be, is somebody to just support them in their journey. This year, my word is softening. And I think the word came to me the end of December. So I've been in this softening towards my husband. And for some reason, it was easier for me to allow my children their journey than it was to allow my spouse, because I'm like, his decisions directly affect me every single day. And one day my children will leave, but my spouse, he'll be here, right? Okay, so I'm 3 weeks into that, allowing and letting go. And Kimber, here's the big thing for me. For me, was letting him be the father that he is, without controlling the way that he disciplines, controlling how he shows up for his kids, shaming him for not showing up in the way that I think is best. But I'm not a father. I'm not in that masculine energy. It's almost like, how dare I decide what kind of father he'll be by correcting him all the time, by trying to set him on this path that is my path, right? So 3 weeks in, and there's steps to this process. I definitely couldn't have given allowance to my husband first. But here I am in it, and it's already so beautiful. And him hearing me trust his way when I say, if that's what your dad said, then that's what we need to do, because he told you no first. That type of thing, where I would always say yes after he said no. I'm not stepping all over his power anymore. It's already been so beautiful in our relationship. And I've let go of fear that the father that he is to my children will cause all kinds of trauma. He's a good man. He's not abusing them. Okay, so I'm not allowing abuse. But I was controlling the way he showed up as a father. So 3 weeks in, and I'm just excited to see, what a year of allowing can do for him, for my kids. Oh, I'm emotional. And for our relationship. And for me, gosh, unload another thing off my plate that I don't need to carry. It's not for me to do. It's not for me to do. So thank you. Always, always so inspiring to talk to you. Enriching is the word that I would use. Tell me if there's anything else that you'd like to share.
I'm glad to know you're on the journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's really beautiful to hear you talk about your family, and I learned from you today too. I've got some things I'm taking away from this conversation that I'm gonna go sit with. I really think we got in deep and we got some good stuff today.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for coming and being present with me here and having that be the most important thing in the moment and giving your time that way. Thank you so much, Kimber.